Picture yourself holding the key to a fascinating word, fetch. It seems simple, but it can take you on a journey of action, emotion, and even revival. Think of a word that seems small but has a lot of power. Fetch. At first glance, it looks easy, but it can describe movement, feelings, and even bringing something back to life in unexpected ways. You're in a sunny park. A frisbee lands just a bit too far away. Your friend smiles and says, "Hey, can you fetch it?" It's a warm day, and you're hanging out at the park. Suddenly, a frisbee flies off and lands far away. Your friend grins and asks, "Hey, can you go grab it?" You jog over, pick it up, and toss it right back to him. It feels good to be helpful. You run to it, scoop it up, and throw it back. Doing something useful gives you a little boost. He could say, "I'll fetch it next time." She could reply, "That's so kind of you." He might laugh and say, "Next time it's my turn." She could reply, "That's really nice of you." This is fetch at its most direct. It shows the simple act of going to get something and bringing it back. This is the most basic way to use fetch. It's all about taking something from one place and returning with it. Now imagine sitting with an old friend who has been silent for hours. His eyes look tired and his posture is slumped. Picture an old friend sitting next to you, barely saying a word. He looks exhausted, shoulders heavy with something on his mind. You speak gently, reminding him of happy times and future plans. Suddenly, you fetch him to life. You see his eyes brighten. You start talking, sharing good memories and exciting plans. Little by little, he seems to wake up, his face lighting up. It's as if a light just turned on inside him. She might say, "I need to fetch him to life with a bit of good news." It feels like a switch just flipped up inside him. She could say, "I need to cheer him up with some happy news." It's no longer a physical retrieval. This time, you're pulling someone out of a gloomy state. That's the power of fetch when it carries deeper meaning. This isn't about picking up an object anymore. Now, it's about lifting someone out of sadness, showing how fetch can have an emotional side too. Where did fetch come from? Long ago in Old English, a similar word meant to bring or carry. People used it for everyday chores. Fetch has been around for centuries. In Old English, a related word meant to go and get something, and people used it for daily routines. He went to fetch water from the well. Over time, fetch took on new shades of meaning. Back then, someone might say, "He went to get water from the well." Over time, though, fetch started to take on new meanings. Sailors might have said, "Fetch the rope," but in another situation, a poet could say, "Fetch the truth from the shadows." A sailor might shout, "Bring me the rope." But a poet could use the word in a deeper way, saying, "Find the hidden truth." Centuries later, you might hear someone at an auction boast, "My painting will fetch a fortune." Today, the word is still used even in business. At an auction, someone might proudly say, "This painting will sell for a huge amount." So the word shifted from simple task to financial worth and even emotional rescue. Over time, fetch grew from being about small chores to something much bigger: money, emotions, and even bringing something valuable into reach. Synonyms like bring, retrieve, or pick up feel a bit plainer. Fetch has a touch of old-fashioned charm. Words like bring or get are more common, but fetch has a classic, almost poetic feel to it. It can imply a small journey, often done for someone else's benefit. Notice how each story above shows a different nuance. It often suggests movement, effort, and sometimes doing something for another person. See how the different examples above show its variety? One moment, it's about picking up a frisbee. The next moment, it's about lifting someone's spirit. At first, it's just about retrieving an object. Then suddenly, it's about bringing someone back from sadness. In some cases, fetch might suggest effort or care, while bring can sound more ordinary. Sometimes, fetch makes it seem like there's more work or thought involved, while bring feels much simpler. Would you use fetch in your life? Maybe you'd say, I'll fetch the groceries, or please fetch my coat. Can you imagine using fetch yourself? Maybe you'd tell someone, I'll go grab the groceries, or can you get my coat for me? You might even talk about fetching someone out of sadness. This flexibility is what makes fetch so appealing. You could even use it to describe helping a friend feel better. That's what makes fetch such an interesting word. It can fit many situations. It can fit both everyday tasks and more poetic moments. In the end, fetch is about connection. Fetch isn't just for simple tasks. It can also describe deeper moments, showing how things, or even people, are brought to where they belong. You're connecting an item or a person's hope to where it needs to be. It's all about moving something, whether it's an object or a feeling, to the right place. That's why, even after centuries, fetch still finds new ways to bring meaning into our stories. Where do you want to use it next? That's why fetch has stuck around for so long. It keeps finding new uses. How would you make it part of your own speech? You find yourself in a small attic, dust swirling in the golden light from a tiny window. Old paintings lean against the walls, forgotten. You step into a cramped attic where dust dances in the warm glow of a small window. Faded paintings rest against the walls, left untouched for years. One catches your eye, a landscape, faded but detailed. Your grandfather painted it. Nothing special, you think. But something inside whispers, what if? Among them, one stands out. A quiet landscape, its colors worn but still rich in detail. Your grandfather's work? Just another painting, you think, but a small voice inside nudges you to look closer. At an auction, a collector raises an eyebrow. This is rare, he says, a lost piece from a well-known series. Bidding begins. The numbers climb. At an auction, a man studies the painting, his brow lifting in interest. This is a rare find, he murmurs. A missing work from a famous collection. The auctioneer starts the bidding, and the offers quickly rise. You hold your breath as the hammer falls. It fetches top dollar. Who knew something old could still have such surprising value? Your chest tightens as the auctioneer slams his hammer down. The final price is unbelievable. Who would have guessed this dusty painting held such hidden worth? You might say, I never expected it to fetch that much. Someone could ask, do you think this will fetch a good price? You could say, I had no idea it would sell for that much. Or someone might ask, do you think this will go for a high amount? Fetch means to bring or get something. Here it brings a price, pulling in value. Money is just another thing we fetch. Fetch usually means to grab or retrieve something. In this case, it's about attracting money. Just like objects, prices can be brought in too. Like fetching a stick for a dog or an old memory from the past, we can fetch opportunities, rewards, and even regrets. A dog runs after a stick, just like we chase after memories. Some things we bring into our lives are good. Chances, success. Others, like regrets, come whether we want them or not. Now imagine standing on a mountain. The wind hums around you. The valley below stretches endlessly. You reach out for a rock. Picture yourself high above the world standing on a mountaintop. The wind sings past your ears. Below, the valley spreads out forever. Your hand brushes over a rough stone. Your foot slips. A small stone fetches down, tumbling toward the abyss. You watch it bounce, each hit making a soft sound. A misstep. Your foot shifts, and a tiny rock rolls off the edge, tumbling into the depths. It knocks against the mountainside, making faint echoes as it drops. You could say, careful, you don't want to fetch yourself down with that rock. Or someone might think, even the smallest push matters. You might warn, watch your step. You don't want to slip and go with it. Or someone might realize, even the tiniest shift can set things in motion. When things fetch down, they fall, sometimes naturally, sometimes unexpectedly. Like high prices fetching down when demand drops or weak arguments falling in debate. To fetch down means to drop, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. Prices fall when people stop buying, and weak ideas collapse when challenged. Even great things can fall, but does that mean they lose their worth? A mountain remains, even when its rocks fetch down. Even strong things break over time, but does that make them useless? A mountain doesn't disappear just because a few stones roll away. Now let's step into a quiet street where a friend waits at his doorstep. His birthday is tomorrow and you want a surprise. Imagine a silent street in the evening. Your friend stands outside his home, unaware that tomorrow he's in for something unforgettable. You arrange something special. His favorite musician, flown in secretly. At sunset, a car pulls up. The musician steps out, smiling. You set up a once-in-a-lifetime moment, his favorite singer, brought in without him knowing. As the sun dips below the rooftops, a sleek car arrives. The door opens and out steps the special guest. Your friend's jaw drops. You fetched over a legend. His voice shakes with disbelief as he steps forward to greet the unexpected guest. Your friend's mouth falls open. You actually brought him here? His voice wavers, half in shock, half in excitement, as he moves closer. You might say, I had to fetch over something unforgettable. Someone could ask, how did you even fetch him over here? You might laugh and say, I had to bring in something big. Someone might ask, how did you even manage to get him here? To fetch over is to bring something across a distance. A performer fetched over for a show. A secret fetched over from the past. To fetch over means to bring something from far away. A famous artist can be flown in for an event. A forgotten story can be uncovered and shared again. Or a feeling fetched over from an old memory. Some things travel far to reach us, but when they do, they change everything. Or maybe it's an emotion that resurfaces after years. Some things take time to return, but when they do, they leave a mark. In all these cases, fetch is about bringing something, from nothing to value, from high to low, from far to near. In every story, fetch is about movement, turning something forgotten into something valuable, letting something drop, or drawing something closer. A price, a rock, a person. We fetch things all the time. The question is, what are you fetching in your life right now? Money, memories, people. We are always bringing things into our lives. The real question is, what are you reaching for right now? Have you ever walked into a small, dimly lit room and felt a tense air around you? The investigator sits across the table, staring at some old documents. Have you ever stepped into a gloomy, quiet space and instantly sensed something was off? Across from you, a detective sits in deep concentration, scanning aged papers. He might say, let's fetch out the truth lurking here. You lean in and trying to see what he sees. There's a tiny clue on one of the pages. He might murmur, let's dig up the truth hiding in these pages. You lean closer, eager to spot what has caught his attention. A barely noticeable detail stands out. That clue could change everything. Sometimes to fetch out means to bring hidden facts into the open. It's like pulling a secret from the shadows. That small piece of information might turn the whole case upside down. Fetch out is about exposing something concealed, like dragging a mystery into plain sight. Another way to see it is to extract or to reveal. Where or when might you use this phrase yourself? Maybe at work when you need to fetch out missing details from a project. Another way to say it is to dig out or to uncover. When might you use this? Perhaps when working on a project and trying to track down key missing details. Or in everyday life when you try to figure out why something happened. You could say, I want to fetch out the real reason behind this decision. Or even in daily conversations, when you're trying to get to the bottom of something. You might say, I want to understand the true reason behind his choice. Notice the mood here, tense, curious, a bit serious. But it still connects to the basic idea of bringing something forth. The tone, a mix of mystery, curiosity, and suspense. But at its heart, it's all about making something hidden visible. Imagine there's a mysterious magician who promises to fetch away any trouble. He could say, I will fetch away your worries with one wave of my hand. Picture an enigmatic magician with a sly grin. With a single motion, I'll make all your troubles vanish, he declares, as if his words alone hold power. But what if something unexpected happens? The sadness he tries to remove might return in a different form. We often use fetch away when we imagine taking something far from us. But what if things don't go as planned? Maybe the sorrow doesn't truly disappear, it just finds another way to creep back in. Fetch away often suggests making something distant, as if pushing it far from reach. Like removing a heavy burden, where or when would you say it? Perhaps you're joking with a friend who wants to forget a bad day. It's like lifting a weight off someone's chest. When could you use this phrase? Maybe while teasing a friend who just wants to erase a stressful day from memory. You might say, I wish I could fetch away your stress. It's like asking to remove pain or sorrow. The original sense of fetch is still there. You could say, I wish I could take all your worries off your shoulders. It's another way of saying you want to ease someone's burden. The idea of movement, taking something away, is still present. Going out and coming back with something, or in this case, taking it away. It can feel magical or dramatic. The mood here is more whimsical, hinting at fantasy. It's still about motion, either retrieving something or making it disappear. This version carries a dreamy, almost fairy tale quality. Yet it's still tied to the idea of moving something from one place to another. At its core, it remains about shifting something, either physically or emotionally, somewhere else. You find yourself in a crowded cafe. A tired man in an apron moves around, fetching and carrying. He might say, I'm here to fetch your order, while he balances plates and cups. Picture a bustling cafe filled with chatter. A weary waiter in a stained apron hurries between tables, carefully holding trays. Let me grab your order, he says with a quick nod. Fetch and carry suggests a humble task, often done for others. Where might you use it? Maybe you have a job that requires you to fetch and carry items for people. The phrase fetch and carry brings to mind simple, everyday tasks, often ones done to help someone else. Maybe your job involves running back and forth, picking things up for others. Or you remember a time when you had to run errands all day. You could joke, I spent the afternoon fetching and carrying groceries. Or maybe you had one of those exhausting days filled with errands. You might joke, I was out all day, lugging around bags like a delivery person. This phrase carries a sense of service, yet it keeps that core meaning of fetch, to go, pick up, and bring back. There's a feeling of duty in this phrase, but the central meaning stays the same. Going somewhere, collecting something, and returning with it. It's less dramatic than fetch away, and more routine than fetch out. In the end, each variation of fetch has a different flavor. It's more ordinary than fetch away and less intense than fetch out. But every version adds its own unique touch. It can reveal secrets, remove burdens, or simply deliver items. But all these meanings link to one root idea: going out to bring something forth or take it away. It can help expose hidden truths, lift worries, or just complete a simple task. Yet at its heart, it's always about movement, either retrieving or removing. That's the magic behind the word fetch. That's what makes fetch so interesting. It always involves action, whether it's finding, bringing, or making something disappear. People often think of fetch as a simple word. It means to bring something, right? But it can stretch into many shades of meaning. At first glance, fetch seems like an easy word. You just take something and bring it back, but in reality, it can twist and turn into many different meanings. Sometimes you fetch away something precious. Sometimes you fetch off a daring move. Other times you fetch in a new alliance. It all depends on context. You might snatch something valuable and make it disappear. Or maybe you pull off a bold move that takes skill. In other cases, you gather unexpected allies. The meaning shifts based on the situation. Let's look at 3 moments in history where fetch took on surprising forms. Here are 3 real-life events where fetch played a role in ways you wouldn't expect. In the dead of night, a group of robbers pulled off the Great Train Robbery. They stopped a Royal Mail train in England. Late one night, a gang of thieves set their sights on a Royal Mail train in England. What happened next became one of the most infamous heists in history. They grabbed over £2.6 million. Those guys really knew how to fetch away a fortune without a trace. No guns, just careful planning. They got their hands on a staggering £2.6 million and vanished into the night. No weapons, no chaos, just a perfectly executed plan. By the time the police arrived, the train was still there, but the money was gone. One robber ended up in Brazil. When authorities showed up, they found the train untouched, but the cash was long gone. One of the thieves later made his escape all the way to Brazil. Yet most of the cash was never fetched back. This heist became a legend. Some say the mastermind managed to fetch off a crime so smooth. The majority of the stolen money was never recovered, and the robbery became the stuff of legends. Many believe the brains behind it pulled off a job so perfect, it was almost unbelievable. It felt unreal. That's the raw excitement of fetch away. It's about taking something so completely that it leaves little evidence behind. It was like something out of a movie. That's the essence of fetch away, not just stealing something, but making it disappear without a single clue. Then there's D.B. Cooper. He boarded a plane, demanded $200,000, and jumped into a forest with a parachute. He fetched off the ultimate getaway. And then there's the mysterious D.B. Cooper. He hijacked a plane, collected a fortune, and made his escape by parachuting into the unknown. One leap, and he vanished forever. Despite a huge manhunt, no one ever found him. Some say he fetched away into the wild. With a single jump, he was gone. The authorities searched for years, but he was never seen again. Some believe he managed to slip into the wilderness and start a new life. Others think the fall killed him. Years later, part of the money turned up near a river, but the rest of the story stayed hidden. Others argue that he didn't survive the landing. Decades later, a few bundles of his ransom money surfaced by a river, but the rest of the mystery remained unsolved. People keep trying to fetch out new clues, but the truth remains a ghost. In this case, fetch off hints at pulling off a bold plan. Even today, people dig for new evidence, but the case remains unsolved. Here, fetch off is all about executing a high-risk plan that few would dare to attempt. It's risky, but if it works, it's legendary. Taking that kind of chance is dangerous, but when it succeeds, it becomes a story people never forget. During World War II, a strange scene unfolded at Castle Itter in Austria. American soldiers, French prisoners, and German defectors teamed up against SS troops. One of the war's most unusual battles took place at Castle Itter in Austria. American forces, French captives, and even former Nazi soldiers joined forces against the SS. They had to fetch in help from all sides just to survive. It felt unreal. When Nazis and Americans fight together, you fetched in a weird situation. To stay alive, they had to call for reinforcements from the most unexpected places. When sworn enemies end up on the same team, you know things have taken a strange turn. Yet it happened, and the castle was saved. This event shows how fetch-in can mean rallying resources and allies, even if they seem unlikely. And yet, against all odds, they managed to hold the castle. This moment proves that fetch-in isn't just about gathering help. It's about finding support in the most unpredictable ways. It's a reminder that sometimes you bring people together to face a bigger danger. It's proof that when the threat is big enough, even those who were once enemies can fight on the same side. In each story, fetch holds a different energy. Fetch away grabs hold of something and spirits it off. Fetch off completes a clever plan at a critical moment. Each of these stories gives fetch a unique twist. Fetch away is about making something disappear without a trace. Fetch off is about pulling off a plan exactly when it matters most. Fetch in brings outside support for a single cause. They all tie back to the core idea of bringing something toward you. And fetch in is all about gathering the right people or resources when they're needed most. No matter the situation, fetch always involves bringing something closer. Maybe it's money, an escape, or unexpected allies. By understanding how these forms of fetch worked in these historical twists, we see its power. Whether it's stealing a fortune, making a getaway, or rallying a team, fetch shows up in moments that change history. It's about more than just picking something up. It's about how you move it, why you move it, and what that action means. It's not just about grabbing something. It's about the reason behind it and the impact it leaves behind. When the stakes are high, fetch isn't just a word. It's the difference between disappearing, succeeding, or surviving. In crucial moments, fetch isn't just vocabulary. It's the key to escape, victory, or survival. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. The wind is chilly and you feel a strange pull from the ocean below. Picture yourself standing on a high cliff, the wind brushing against your face. The sea stretches endlessly below, its waves calling to you in a way you can't quite explain. You recall a time when you were here with someone special. You wonder if you could fetch back those days as if grabbing them. Memories surface. Moments shared with someone important. You wish you could pull those days back, as if reaching out and holding them in your hands again. But you sense that some things remain in the past for a reason. Sometimes, fetch back highlights the longing we feel for moments that are gone. Yet, deep inside, you know some things are meant to stay where they are. This phrase captures that feeling of wanting what's already slipped away. Maybe you've felt that ache too. You might say, if only I could fetch back that old feeling. Or you could think, you've probably had that same deep yearning before. Maybe you've thought, I wish I could bring back that feeling. Or even, he wants to fetch back everything he lost. Where and when would you use fetch back in your own life? It's about craving something. He just wants to get back everything that slipped through his fingers. Can you think of a time when you felt that? It's all about longing for what's just out of reach. It shows a desire for what seems out of reach. In its most literal sense, fetch means to go and bring something. It expresses the feeling of wanting something distant. Normally, fetch is used when someone goes to get an object and returns with it. But here it's more about trying to retrieve what slipped through your fingers. But in this case, it's about chasing after things that feel lost forever. Imagine you're on a quiet beach. The sun is setting in vibrant orange hues and the waves roll calmly at your feet. Picture a peaceful shore where the golden sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky with warm colors. Gentle waves touch the sand as you stand still. Out of nowhere, thoughts flood your mind. You feel overwhelmed. In that moment, you fetch a sigh. Your mind suddenly fills with swirling thoughts, almost too much to handle. You let out a deep breath, hoping to release some of the weight. It's like pulling a deep breath from deep within you and letting it go. Sometimes that simple act can bring relief. It feels like drawing a long breath from the very core of your chest and setting it free. Just that small action can ease the tension. You might say, I need to fetch a sigh before I lose my cool. Or she could think, let me fetch a sigh. You could say, I need a deep breath before I lose patience. Or she might think, I should exhale and reset. Let me clear my head. When would you use fetch a sigh? Maybe when life feels heavy and you need an instant release. I just need a second to breathe. When might you use this? Perhaps when stress builds up and you're searching for a quick way to ease the pressure. This meaning connects back to the root sense of fetch as bringing something forth. Instead of retrieving an object, you're pulling an emotional response. This use still ties back to the original idea of fetch, bringing something out. But instead of a physical thing, it's an inner feeling surfacing. It shows a gentle but significant way to handle stress or tension. You're not fetching a physical thing, but you're bringing out a feeling. It's a simple yet powerful way to cope with pressure. Instead of retrieving an item, you're drawing out a moment of relief. Out of nowhere, a small and curious man slips into a crowded room. He starts to fetch about, asking one question after another. A short man with sharp eyes sneaks into a busy room. He moves quickly, firing off questions at everyone around him. At first, people ignore him. Soon, though, they realize he's collecting clues. He's piecing together details with a quick mind and watchful eyes. At first, no one pays him much attention, but then they notice he isn't just talking. He's gathering bits of information and connecting them in his head. "Why do you fetch about like that?" someone might ask him. He might say, "I fetch about so I can learn every secret." "Why do you keep asking all these questions?" someone might ask. He might smirk and say, "I do it to uncover what others don't see." Where would you use fetch about? It can mean to search or rummage for knowledge. It's like hunting around for facts or stories. When could you use fetch about? It describes searching for information, digging around for details like a detective looking for clues. If we compare it to the plain meaning of fetch, it's still about gathering something, but now it's not an item in your hand. Compared to the usual meaning of fetch, it still involves collecting something, but instead of an object, it's knowledge or facts. It's information, details, or answers. The mood here is curious and a bit mischievous. It suggests a restless energy, digging up bits of truth. It's about gathering knowledge, picking up small but important details. There's an air of excitement, like someone always on the hunt for hidden truths. All these different shades of fetch show how one word can stretch in several directions. You might try to fetch back a lost time. These examples reveal how a single word can shift its meaning. Maybe you want to reach for a past moment, trying to bring it close again. You might fetch a sigh for relief, or fetch about for answers. Each idea carries part of the original sense, going and bringing something. You could take a deep breath to ease your mind or search around for facts. Each meaning still connects to the idea of bringing something toward you. But the target changes. One time it's your memories, another time it's your feelings, and yet another time it's hidden knowledge. What you're reaching for changes. Sometimes it's the past, sometimes it's emotions, and other times it's bits of information waiting to be discovered. Where could you use these variations in everyday life? Sometimes we crave old experiences. Sometimes we just need to breathe. Think about how this applies to your own life. Maybe you long for an old memory, or maybe you just need a moment to pause and reset. Sometimes we want to uncover what others overlook. That's the power of words like fetch. Other times we're eager to find the truth hidden beneath the surface. That's the beauty of a word like fetch. They remind us that language can travel, gather, and return with meanings we didn't even know we were missing. They show us that words can shift, adapt, and bring back new meanings, sometimes in ways we never saw coming. Imagine you step into a crowded hall. Everyone is busy chatting, and you wonder how to stand out. You recall a tip. Fetch in the right kind of attention. You find yourself in a buzzing room, full of people deep in conversation. You pause, thinking, how do I make myself noticed? Then, a useful idea pops into your mind. You need to attract the right kind of interest. You speak softly, but your words hit the mark. You see faces turn to you. It's not about being loud, it's about finding the perfect moment. Your voice is calm, but what you say grabs attention. Heads turn in your direction. It's not about making noise, it's about choosing your words wisely. You might say, I should fetch in some interest by saying something surprising. Or he might think, let me fetch in a bit of mystery to spark curiosity. You could tell yourself, I need to catch their interest with something unexpected. Or he might decide, a little mystery will make them listen more closely. Where could you try this? Perhaps at a party or maybe during a work presentation? When you fetch an attention this way, it feels natural. Where could this be useful? Maybe while chatting at a gathering or during an important discussion at work. When you capture attention like this, it doesn't feel forced. It's like inviting curiosity to come closer. This meaning of fetch connects to the original sense of bring, but now you're bringing focus instead of an object. It's as if you're pulling people's curiosity toward you. Originally, fetch meant bringing something physical, but now it's about drawing focus instead. Picture yourself walking along your favorite street. It's calm. Then, without warning, someone from long ago appears. This is a classic moment of fetch up. Imagine strolling down a familiar street, lost in thought. Suddenly, an old acquaintance steps into view. That's a perfect example of something that just shows up out of nowhere. The encounter just shows up in your path. You might whisper, "Things always fetch up, whether I plan them or not." This meeting happens completely by chance. You might mutter, "Things like this always seem to appear unexpectedly." Or he could say, "I guess fate can fetch up the strangest surprises." You can use fetch up when you talk about something that arrives or crops up in your life. Or he might chuckle, "Life has a way of bringing back the most unexpected things." The phrase fetch up fits when something suddenly happens or resurfaces. It's a bit like the original meaning of bring, but now it's more about events and less about physical items. Sometimes it carries a feeling of destiny. It still connects to the idea of bringing something, but instead of objects, it's about events appearing. Sometimes it even feels like fate stepping in. Other times it feels random. Where do you think it might happen for you? Maybe in a coffee shop or on a train ride to a faraway city? Other times it's pure coincidence. Where might it happen in your life? Maybe while waiting in line at a bookstore or during a long bus ride. When fetch up happens, it's as if the universe is giving you a nudge. When something fetches up, it feels like the world is subtly reminding you of something important. Now imagine a high-stakes business meeting. Every deal is on the edge. You sense the pressure in the room. You need that perfect phrase. Visualize a room filled with tension. Each decision could change everything. The pressure is intense, and you realize you need to say just the right thing. You fetch off a bold statement, and the air changes. Your colleagues stare, then they cheer. You confidently drop a strong statement, and the entire atmosphere shifts. People pause, then suddenly, excitement fills the room. You could say, "Let me fetch off one brilliant idea before we end." Or you might reply, "She managed to fetch off a great comeback at the last second." You might suggest, "I've got one last powerful idea before we wrap things up." Or he could comment, "She pulled off an amazing response just in time." Fetch off has the notion of achieving something, often at a decisive moment. It still ties back to the idea of fetching or bringing something. Fetch off means making something happen, usually right when it counts. It still connects to the idea of bringing something, but now it's about completing a critical action. But now it feels like you're delivering a sharp move that saves the day. Consider using fetch off when something surprising wins the moment. It's more about executing a well-timed action that turns the situation around. Use fetch off when you want to describe a clever or unexpected success. It's all about timing and that thrilling sense of final success. It's about choosing the right moment and experiencing the satisfaction of nailing it. So how do these ideas link together? Each one uses fetch in a slightly different way. Fetch in pulls attention in your direction. So, what's the common thread? Each variation of fetch works differently. Fetch in helps you attract focus toward yourself. Fetch up is about something coming along in your path. Fetch off suggests a completion or a sudden success. Fetch up refers to something appearing unexpectedly. Fetch off describes pulling off something impressive, often just in time. All three carry that shared sense of bringing something to you, whether it's attention, an event, or a victorious move. They all involve bringing something into your experience, whether it's people's interest, a surprising event, or a big achievement. You can see how the original meaning to go get something becomes more abstract. Sometimes it's about grabbing someone's focus. The old meaning of fetch was simple, retrieving something. Now it has evolved to include gaining attention. Sometimes it's about a moment that seems to arrive on its own. Other times it's about delivering the final push. It can mean something appearing by chance, or it can be about making that last decisive move. You might say, I love how fetch adapts to all these moments. By noticing these layers, you can choose the right tone or nuance for your own stories. You could say, it's interesting how a fetch changes depending on the situation. Understanding these differences helps you use it naturally in your own way.